It's almost like he was pinned to his bed and he couldn't get up. And he tried to pull himself up, but he couldn't get up. And then all of a sudden, it's almost as if he was starting to be pulled down through his bed. And it was really strange to him. He said, "Man, I must be dreaming." But as he was being pulled down through his bed, all of a sudden he could see the mattress above him. He's like, "Whoa, what is this? What's going on?" And all of a sudden he's being pulled down and he's under his bed. He can see his bed on top of him. And he's laying completely flat. And all of a sudden he notices that there's something very cold around his wrist and around his ankles. And that's what's pulling him. All of a sudden he starts being pulled through the bedroom floor. And now he's wanting to start fighting. He starts pulling some and hollering, "Hey, what's going on? What's happening?" And he keeps being pulled, and pretty soon he's in the basement. And he's being pulled flat, just laying flat, being pulled. But he can see light. He can still see some of his bedroom. And he's being jerked down through the floor. All of a sudden, he's underneath the basement being pulled through the earth. And it starts to get very cold. So cold that he almost can't feel his hands. And he's being pulled, Brother Andy, and pulled, and he sees himself going down through the earth, and it starts to get very, very dark. To where that there's just that one spot of light above him that he can see. He knows that's his bedroom. He knows that's where he started from. He says to himself, "If I can get back up to that little bit of light, I'll be back in my bedroom." He starts hollering, "Mom! Mom, wake me up! Wake me up, Mom!" And he's being pulled and pulled and pulled. All of a sudden, and just like the puff of a wind, things stop being cold. And things begin to be hot. So much so that he begins to perspire, and he's still being pulled. And he's still fighting. He's still trying to get free from it. And he starts thinking to himself, "Oh man, I'll be glad when this thing is over. I'll be glad when this dream is over." And the heat begins to be so intense that he starts getting sweat on his face. And he starts sweating like he's never sweated before. And as he's being pulled, and they're all of a sudden, he can see just that little speck of light up where he knows, "That's my bedroom, that's my bedroom." And all of a sudden, back in the distance, he hears something he's never heard before in his life. A noise that starts out very shallow. And as he's being pulled faster, faster, and faster, it gets louder and louder. And he finally realizes it is people screaming. He can't see them, but he hears them screaming. Screams like he'd never heard before in his life. And he's getting pulled down and pulled down and pulled down. And the screams are getting louder and louder and louder. And the heat is becoming more intense and more intense and more intense. And finally he gets pulled down, and all of a sudden he comes to a quick stop. Slam! And he feels his arms being stretched out. And a nail goes in one hand, and a nail goes in the other. And his feet are being stretched out. And a nail goes in his foot, and another nail goes in his other foot. And he's stretched out like this. All of a sudden, he feels himself being propped up. And he felt the weight come down on his hands, and the whole time he's hollering, "No! Mom, wake me up! Please, Mom, wake me up!" He hears rocks being piled up under underneath him. Rock after rock after rock. He can't see anything. But he looks up from where he's hanging. And he looks up and he still sees that little speck of light. Thinking to myself, oh, thank God whenever I wake up and I can be in my bedroom. All of a sudden, underneath him, poof, there's a fire that lights. And he feels that fire begin to burn the bottom of his feet. And it was the most amazing thing as he's screaming and hollering, he's looking at his feet. But they're not being burned up. His toenails are burnt completely off of his feet. But the flesh is not being burned up. It begins to turn black. And he's screaming and hollering, Mom, please, please, Mom, wake me up. And as that fire gets higher and higher and hotter and hotter, his feet get black. His ankles begin to turn black. He had on one of them little ankle bracelets. That ankle bracelet burnt right off of him. And his leg begins to turn black. And all up through him, his legs up through his knees are turning black. But his flesh ain't falling off. And now the agony is so intense that his screams had become to be mixed with the other screams that he heard when he was descending. That fire gets so hot it comes up on him. He's got his arms out, Brother Casey, it's burning him. He's just turning black. Again, his flesh is not coming off the bone. It's just an immense amount of pain. So much pain, so much heat, that he can feel it burning his bone, even the marrow in his bone. But his flesh is not being consumed. His bone is not being consumed. Nothing is being consumed except for the outward articles that he has on. That watch that his dad gave him burns right off of his wrist. His little necklace burns right off of his wrist. All that blackness, he just turns almost just so black. His teeth are burnt out of his head. His eyelashes, eyebrows, hair, it's all burnt off. There hangs a figure of a young man, 24 years old, black can be, screaming and hollering in agony from the pain of the fire that's been lit underneath him. Then suddenly there's another fire out in front of him. Poof, that lights up real bright. He sees another image that looks exactly like him. And its eyes open and he can see the whites of his eyes. And that image says to him, Son, oh my God, son, how did you wind up here? How did you come here? You should have went with your mother. She tried to take you to church. She tried to lead you to Jesus.